Good morning, Asbury. Good morning. It's really good to see you this morning. I'm glad you're here for worship, and if you're visiting us, we're glad you chose to visit us this morning. If you are a visitor, hopefully you received a visitor packet, and if you would take a few moments to complete that blue sheet and either put in the offering plates or in the basket out in the entryway, during the week, Pastor Chelsea or I will contact you and try to answer questions and connect you with things that you care about. We also want to remind you we have prayer time later in the service, and so if you have a prayer request, be sure to fill out the prayer card. You'll find them in front of you on the pew back. And if you'll hand them to me or one of the ushers during the passing of the peace, we'll be glad to include those in our prayer time. This morning we'll be considering hospitality in the many different ways God invites us to be hospitable to those who are like us and those who are unlike us. And so it'll be a wonderful time of exploring that. And so I invite you now to prepare your hearts and minds for worship as the acolytes prepare to bring down the light of Christ and invite us all to be present for God's Spirit this morning.
Before I begin the reading in this time of Thanksgiving, I want to give thanks of 40 years of marriage to my wonderful wife, Barbara. Today is our actual wedding anniversary, and it might seem like we planned it for me to be the reader, but that's not the case. I was scheduled to read in October, and we were out of town, and I got rescheduled for today. So what a joy it is to celebrate our anniversary with our church family. But today is not the only anniversary. We have another anniversary today. It is Paul and Karen Bauman's 51st wedding anniversary. So we have flowers on the altar for that as well. She forgot to do it last year, so just makes up for it. Happy anniversary, Karen and Paul. Now on to the reading. In this morning's passage, it may seem odd that we're reading part of the traditional Christmas story. However, we notice in this passage that through the reading of stars, it is foreign religious folk who understand that a new king has been born in Israel. Religious scholars understand that the Magi were followers of Zoroastrianism, that those are followers of the faith called Zoroaster. It's a particular religion practiced in the East. It's also the Magi who helped save Jesus' life. Could this story be suggesting to us that God has a better way for the world's religions to relate to one another? Now hear this reading from Matthew 2, verses 1 through 12. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in the territory of Judea, during the rule of King Herod, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. They asked, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We've seen his star in the east, and we've come to honor him." When King Herod heard this, he was troubled, and everyone in Jerusalem was troubled with him. He gathered all the chief priests and the legal experts and asked them where the Christ was to be born. They said, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what the prophet wrote. You, Bethlehem, land of Judah, by no means are the least among the rulers of Judah, because from you will come one who governs, one who will shepherd my people, Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and found out from them the time when the star had first appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search carefully for the child. When you found him, report to me, that I too may go and honor him." When they heard the king, they went, and look, the star had seen in the east, and they went ahead of them until it stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with Mary, his mother. Falling to their knees, they honored him. Then they opened their treasure chests and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Because they were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their own country by another route. So ends the reading of the word.
Will you pray with me? Gracious God, as we prepare to hear what you might say to us through the moment of preaching, we ask that you open our minds and hearts, that we might be open to the leading of your Spirit. Amen. So they were called Magi. We know them as wise men, wise guys, kings, philosophers. They were astrologers, holy men of a foreign religion. They had observed a strange celestial phenomena which they interpreted to mean that a new king had been born in Judea. According to Matthew's gospel, they traveled to honor this new king, bringing valuable treasures of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, precious gifts indeed. Now, I know this is usually the reading we do on Epiphany Sunday, but if you bear with me, you'll see why I chose this passage for today. Gift giving, it turns out, was at the heart of all that Jesus would say and do. Jesus would teach that God is like a parent who loves to shower sons and daughters with good gifts. The kingdom or the commonwealth of God that Jesus constantly proclaimed was characterized by an abundant, gracious, extravagant economy of grace, a generosity of gift giving. Jesus taught that it was better to give than to receive. Followers in the way of Jesus came to understand that Jesus himself was a gift, expressing God's love to the whole world. So in memory of the wise guys' gift giving to Jesus, in honor of Jesus' teaching and example of gift giving, and as an echo of God's self-giving in Jesus, we joyfully give gifts to one another at Christmas to celebrate the birth of Jesus. But not everyone felt generosity in response to this new baby. King Herod was furious that a baby was born who might upset the status quo. And so he deployed all the troops to the Bethlehem region in order to kill all the baby boys born around the time that Jesus would have been born. And so Joseph was warned in a dream to escape. And so the family fled south to Egypt, where Jesus spent the first part of his life as a refugee. How meaningful I think it is that members of other religions, the Magi, or the followers of Zoroastrianism from the east, and the polytheistic Egyptians to the south, helped to save the life of Jesus. Could their role in the Christmas story be a gift to us today? Could they be telling us that God has a better way for religions to relate to one another than how our world has been doing it for the last several hundred years? Through the centuries, religions have repeatedly divided people. Religions, including ours, Christianity, have too often spread fear, prejudice, hate, and violence in our world. As the hymn said in the opening hymn we sang, sometimes we cause harm by adhering to antiquated creeds. But in the Magi's offering of gifts to honor the infant Jesus, and in the Egyptians' protective hospitality for Jesus and his refugee family, we see a much better way. A way Jesus himself embodied and taught when he became an adult. They remind us that members of Earth's religion, of all the religions on earth, do not need to see each other as competitors and enemies. Instead, we can approach one another with the spirit of gift-giving and honor as exemplified by the Magi. We can be there to welcome and protect one another as exemplified by the Egyptians. Instead of looking for faults and errors by which religions can be discredited, insulted, and excluded, we can ask other questions. What good can be discovered from this religion? Let us honor that good. What treasures have they been given to share with us? Let us warmly welcome those treasures. What dangers do they face? Let us protect them. What gifts do we have to share with them? Let us generously offer them. And so that brings us to our Pew Buddy question. What is a gift that a follower in the way of Jesus can share with people of other religions? And so I want to invite you to take a moment and find one or two other people that you can talk about this with. And if you don't want to talk today, take this time to be in silent prayer. But what is a gift that followers in the way of Jesus can share with people of other religions? So let's take a few moments to talk about that. So after worship, I hope you'll share with me some of the gifts you came up with, because I think it's an important thing for us to think about. So according to Matthew, when King Herod died, Joseph had another dream that told him it was safe to return to his homeland. However, Herod's son was still ruling in Judea, which was the region around Bethlehem where they were from, and so the family went further north to a region called Galilee. And they resettled, of course, in Nazareth, and so Jesus grew up in Nazareth of Galilee. And that would be his address until he became a young adult. So having been protected by the Magi and the Egyptians, Jesus grew up there. And the Jews there were descendants of the Judeans who had survived the Babylonian invasion over 5 centuries earlier. They had not lost their identity while living in exile in Babylon. And of course, living in exile was the Babylonians carted them off, took them to Babylon, and had them live there. And oftentimes, they did that so they left the peasant classes at home but took all the leaders, so there wouldn't be rebellion when they were trying to conquer these massive territories. And so, but there they were in that exile, but still they maintained their Jewish identity even in exile. And then when they came back, they survived occupation and oppression by the Persians, the Romans, and the Greek at different times. And because the Jews had so courageously survived oppression and mistreatment by others, and because they believed that God had given them special blessings to enjoy and to share with everyone, Jewish identity was highly cherished. No wonder it was repeatedly affirmed and celebrated through holidays like Passover and rites of passage like circumcision. Now, Luke's gospel does not tell the story about the Magi or the Egyptians. For Luke, the next big event after the birth of Jesus came 8 days later, when Jesus' parents took him to the temple in Jerusalem to be circumcised, which of course is a primary sign of identity for Jewish sons. Imagine Mary and Joseph's surprise when an old man, a perfect stranger to them, came up to them. His name was Simeon, and he took Jesus from them and he held Jesus, and he began praising God, saying, "This child will be a light for revelation to the Gentiles," which was non-Jewish people, "and a glory to God's people of Israel." Simeon was seeing in Jesus a gift for us and for them both, not one against the other or one without the other, but both Jews and Gentiles together. Old Simeon, the Jew in Luke's gospel, and the non-Jewish Magi from the east in Matthew's gospel agree that this child will be special, and that he is worthy of honor, and that he has gifts that will bring blessings to his own people and to people everywhere. To be a follower in the way of Jesus is to know ourselves as a part of this tradition, and through that tradition to have a history and an identity to enjoy, to preserve, and to share. It is to see others as a part of their unique traditions too, with their own history, their own identity, and their own gifts. Like the Magi, like the Egyptians, like old Simeon, we don't have to see people of other religions in terms of us versus them. We can see people of other religions as beloved neighbors, us with them with us, with all who have gifts to share. May we follow in the way of Jesus to discover the gifts of our tradition and share them generously. And may we joyfully receive the gifts that others bring to us as well. For every good gift and every perfect gift comes from God. Amen.